David Rumer, and I am the Area Vice President of the Accounts Business Unit in Canada. To be in this position is an absolute honor to serve and support the many hardworking bookkeepers, accountants, and CPA firms who are doing so much to help Canadians in their quest to build profitable and sustainable businesses, and to live the life they were meant to live. And that is a beautiful thing. Welcome to this live event designed to inspire, stimulate thought, and to encourage positive action. Today, we are going to be talking about how to build a human firm. Before we get started, let's just cover a little bit of housekeeping, just a few things here. There's a question panel off to the side. Please feel free to enter any questions at any point in time. We will have a live Q&A session towards the end of this webinar, and this recording will be made available to you in a follow-up email that you'll be receiving. So let's get started. Today's speakers, Will Farnell. Will, welcome. I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you as a person, and I've been inspired by your thought leadership. You've written 2 books, The Digital Firm and The Human Firm. You have deeply experienced both journeys, Will, with your firm, Farnell Clark Accounts, and that puts you in a great position to share your knowledge and wisdom. So please, Will, tell us about your life mission and your journey. It's a great story.
Thank you very much, Dave, and hey, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of what I know is a busy schedule for accountants and bookkeepers to come and join us today. So as I said, my name is Will Farnell. As you may tell from the accent, I'm not from these parts. I'm based out here in the UK. And I've had a really interesting journey, and I'm really fortunate in that I get the opportunity to share that journey with other firms, thankfully all around the world, because we all face the same challenges. Like wherever we are in the world, we face the same challenges because we all share the same mission in terms of supporting the clients that we serve. So a little bit about my background. I set my firm up in 2007, and I had a purpose that only became very clear in terms of how powerful that purpose was a few years back. But when I set my firm up, I felt that professional services were broken. So I set out to change the way professional services were delivered and the way that the people that use these services perceive them. And that drove so many of the decisions that I made in building my firm. But one of the first things that we did, and probably one of the most fundamental, is that we were very early adopters of technology. So much so that I make a claim that nobody's challenged me on quite yet, so I'll keep using it for the time being, which is that we were the first 100% cloud-based practice globally back in 2009, which meant that every client we've got was using cloud-based technology. And some of the drivers for that was that it kind of felt like a no-brainer. That why would I not want access to my clients' data 24/7 to be able to support them when they needed it? So we lived and breathed tech. It was a big part of what we did, but I had the advantage of not having trained in practice. So I had no preconceptions about how to run an accounting firm. So I put myself in the shoes of a client and said, look, if I'm buying these services, what are the things that are important to me? And it shaped a lot of what we did as a business. As Dave said, 2018, I wrote my first book, The Digital Firm, which was intended to be a blueprint really for firms that wanted to use technology to deliver better experiences for the clients that they serve. And I was very fortunate 5 years on from that to get into a conversation with Sage here in the UK about the ideas I had for a follow-up to that book. And The Human Firm was published in 2023 with the support of Sage. So I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to work with the team both here in the UK, now in Canada, in South Africa, to give me another opportunity really to share, most importantly, the things that didn't work in my growth story. And Farnell Clark has grown 30% year on year for 17 years. So we've grown, we've experienced pain, we've experienced success, but it's always the pain that is most valuable. And I'm a gullible individual who's happy to bare my soul over and over again, many times on stages in front of audiences, to help those firms not make the mistakes that we did. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of those things with you and the audience today, Dave.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. And I want to quote Pablo Picasso, and he said, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. And so, Will, you just give so generously. I know you've got a lot of experiences, but to come and share your stories and journey is just, is just very much appreciated. So, on a more personal note, I believe that you enjoy sailing, perhaps around the south of England, Southampton area.
I do. Wherever I can get on a boat is great. Sometimes I even push myself and travel into Europe and spend a bit of time on charters and things. But yes, when I'm not bearing my soul on stages and webinars, then a boat is the next best place to be. And we have some great sailing on the south coast, but equally where I am on the east coast of England as well.
Yeah, perfect. Well, tell me about sailing around the Solent and the beautiful waterways of the Isle of Wight.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Plenty of racing, and Sage have certainly given me the opportunity to do a bit of racing with them in a couple of corporate competitions and things. But it's a great place to sail. Good waters and plenty to see, plenty of ports to dive into. So a good day sailing out to the Isle of Wight for a gentle alcoholic beverage before heading back.
Perfect. Well, we have some great sailing in Canada as well, in Atlantic Canada on the Atlantic side, as well as in British Columbia and in the Pacific. And I just happen to be living now. I'm originally from Montreal, but I live in Toronto now. And we have sailing just on the south side of Toronto in Lake Ontario, but it's not quite like sailing off the coast of Southampton. Before we move into the next section and talk about the agenda, Brittany, I'd like you to, if you don't mind, come on camera. Brittany is the person who has organized and has put this event together for us. Brittany, thank you very much for all of that. And Brittany will also be monitoring the questions, and we come to the question and answer session. Brittany will come back on camera and we'll ask the questions. So, Brittany, welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Great. Okay, well, let's go and share today's agenda. First of all, in the agenda, Will's going to put into context why it's important to become a human firm. Then he'll go through the steps of and the phases of becoming a human firm. He'll also share a 9-step checklist. That'll be followed up by live Q&A and really then the next steps for you as an organization to get into and evolve to become a human firm. So, Will, why don't you put this into context? Brittany, on to the next slide. What is it, a human firm? Will, tell us what it is and why do the listeners need to become one?
Okay, so let's take a step back, and in the book, the first thing that I say is that step one of becoming a human firm is to become a digital firm. So naturally, there's a natural progression here. Technology is a powerful thing, and it enables us to do many things that are the things that we really should be focusing on, and we'll talk about what that is in a moment. But step one is, how can we use technology to automate the mundane? I was at an event this week, and somebody said, we were talking about the advancements of generative AI, and they said that generative AI is giving us the opportunity to take the robot out of the human, which I thought was a really nice way of thinking about the things that we do that are almost robotic. They're mundane. They're things that we really should be able to blend people, process, and technology to do those things really efficiently, giving us the opportunity to spend the time doing things that really matter. So step one is becoming a digital firm. And the reason that I wrote The Human Firm is that we are at a place right now where any firm, anywhere in the world, can go out and buy the same technology. So we can all go out and buy the technology that's enabled us and firms like us and some of the leading firms you've got in Canada to do amazing things with technology. So the things that were giving us a unique selling proposition 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, are available to everybody. As I said in my introduction, I've spent many hours doing webinars talking about the way that we've developed processes that we can deploy underneath the technology in our business to work really effectively. So you can go out and you can find those webinars and you can replicate the processes of what the really leading firms are able to do. So we have a level playing field. So when we think about the concept of the digital firm, we all have access to the same tools. We all have access to the same processes. The only thing left for us to be able to differentiate what we do is people. So that's how do we engage with the teams that we have working with us? How do we build our propositions for our clients? How do we differentiate in the way that we support our clients? How do we use technology to do all these smart things? So that's the start point really of what the human firm is about. How do we go beyond technology to the next level of innovation and differentiation? And that's people. And the best way that I think I can overlay this is I've talked about the evolution of my journey in accounting from very early on being badged as an online accountant, which in 2009 was a derogatory term. So everybody thought that we didn't care about clients. All we wanted to do was do it as cheaply as we possibly could. But the polar opposite was true. The reason that we wanted to use online technology was so we could get closer to clients. But people didn't quite understand that. And we go through a cycle. And when I first, like the first book, I talked about it as a linear evolution. And we went from online accounting to what we came to refer to as cloud accounting, to what I called a digital firm, through to where we are now with the human firm. But in the second book, what I did is I thought, well, actually, we've gone full circle. So if we think about that, what we've done is we've gone back to where we used to be. So if you think back 25, 30 years, accountants had amazing relationships with their clients. The relationships were so strong that we got invites to the birthdays, the weddings, the funerals. It's kind of the level of relationship that we had. And certainly from a UK point of view, compliance got in the way. So the regulatory obligations that we had meant our focus shift from how do we kind of create great relationships to how do we keep clients out of jail? And that was a big shift, and technology gave us the ability to start to get some of that time back through using online technology and so on. So if we view this now as a linear and we say, well, let's say we started with relationship accounting and then we moved into compliance accounting or regulatory accounting. And then the technology came along and we did the online and we did the cloud and we did the digital firm and we're now doing the human firm. But that as a wheel means that we've gone back to where we started. We've gone back to relationships. But the best thing about this is that the technology means that we build those relationships again with the power of insight. So all of a sudden we have access to data. We have access to information that 25 years ago we didn't have, because we'd get data like 6 months after the year end or at the time that taxes were due to be filed. Whereas now we get data every day. And one of the things that we do as part of being a human firm is that we do bookkeeping. We do it for 60% of our client base, and we do it every day. So every single day we're touching our clients' data and we're doing something with it. So the conversations that we have as a human firm are powered by insight. They're powered by data and knowledge that we didn't have before, which means we make those relationships far more valuable than they've ever been before. So this is why it's really important that we focus on how do we enhance the relationships we have with our clients.
Yeah, I get, obviously in my job, I get a chance to speak with a lot of bookkeeping firms, accounting firms, organizations that have modernized, and you talk about digital transformation, people, process, and technology. Obviously, people within a firm as well as the people in their client base are the most important. Process is just something that is meant to be automated and to give you the ability to the power of insights. But technology is not a disruptor, as you're mentioning. It's a huge enabler. and to leverage that technology, and certainly not since Pacioli in the mid-1400s to develop double entry accounting has there been this much excitement. And I've seen in the last 5 years, the last 3 years, the change that has happened, and it's going to be exponential change moving forward, and this technology is going to accelerate. So it's important to continue to stay on top of the technology because it's evolving. Generative AI and machine learning, these are, we'll all be at the final end, it'll be the humans that are accountable for it, but they're just using these bots to help them have the power of insight and connect more. So you talk in the book, The Human Firm, about the digital revolution and then the human revolution.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's what do we do with the opportunity cost that's going to be created by further technological advancements? Again, session I was at this week, somebody flagged McKinsey have done research that says by 2030, it's possible that 60-70% of what we do today is going to be automated. So there is an opportunity cost. If you had 60% of your time back today, what would you do with it? Like how would you use that time to get deeper involved in the conversations that you have with clients? And if you start thinking about that stuff now, you've got a head start. So some people are not going to hear that for another 3 years. So you've got a 3-year head start on everybody else to start thinking about what can we do? What difference can we make to our clients? What kind of conversations can we have with our clients that put us in a really good place to make sure that we can support them with their goals, their aspirations?
Well, it sounds like perhaps someone I've got to know, maybe they'll use that time to go sailing with their family. But there's many things in that. But, time is really, the ability to be happy, but the ability to have the time to do things that you're passionate about. And it's not only the human firm that is getting that time back, but if they're also giving the time back to their clients who really, have started a business or businesses that they're passionate about, and they see that the future and they're giving back. And so let's maybe get into it, because now I think we've laid the concept. So into the next slide, Brittany, if you will. Will is going to cover really to become and build a human form, the 4 crucial steps to creating, growing, and nurturing a human firm. And this is fascinating, and the way Will described it in the book, the way he's going to articulate it, I mean, it just makes so much sense. So on to the next slide, and phase 1, the first phase is becoming a living brand. I love this. Now, Will, tell us about becoming a living brand. I know you've experienced it. You've helped many firms experience it. So bring it to life. Okay.
So there's a few chunks to this, everybody. So the start point is it comes back to this idea of purpose. Why do we do what we do? Now, I'm not a marketeer, and we were running some events for Sage customers in the UK here yesterday. And I ran
in Manchester. I heard they went really well. Thank you.
Really good, really well received. Really kind of focusing on helping firms think about their proposition, thinking about what they do. And I was running a session that was around acquiring new clients. And the start point for that and becoming a living brand is the idea that as firms, we need to understand the why, what, and how. We need to understand the why we do what we do, the what we do, and how we do it. And we think about brand, and we think about logos, and we think about all of these kind of things, but brands can be fairly static. And what I write about in the book is the idea that I think we have to go beyond brand, and we have to develop what I refer to as a firm personality. And that's an evolution of brand, and it's fluid, and it can change as your firm grows and develops. I mean, we're 17 years old as a firm, so we've kind of just come out of those kind of flighty teenager years, and we are a very different firm to what we were like as a 7-year-old firm and a 13-year-old firm. Yet our core is the same. Our purpose hasn't changed. We've just aged, and we've grown, and we think differently, but we still want to have fun. So if we think about a brand as a personality, we accept that it can change and it can have moods, and that's okay. And if you're in a multi-partner firm, the challenge is you'll have multiple personalities. So what one does everybody hang on to? What one does your team connect to in terms of, well, what personality are we today? We have to develop a personality that's understood by the firm. We've done various things over the years, and one of the things we did is we did a refit in our office back in 2016, and we put a pub in our office. Pub, very English thing, version of a bar. And if anybody's visited England, you'll have visited the King's Head, and you'll have visited the Duke of Wellington. You might even have visited the Fox and Hounds. And we ran a competition with our clients to name our pub. And one of our clients suggested that we call it the Tax and Pounds. So we have a pub in our office called the Tax and Pounds, and it says a lot about our personality. It says that we can have a bit of fun. So the idea of this is that we need to understand our why. We need to understand the purpose. What is it that gets us out of bed in the morning? And what is it that we do? So from a marketing proposition, what do we do? And you might be surprised to know that what we don't do is prepare accounts and tax returns. What we do is we give clients peace of mind. We give them certainty. We give them security. And how we do that is starting to think about what are the things that we do with our clients, and do things like pick your best client. Think about who your best client is and have a conversation with your best client and say, what's the most important thing we do for you? And I would almost bet that the answer to that won't be, well, you always make sure my tax return's filed on time. It will be something much deeper than that. And we want to build a story. So when you say to somebody, hey, I'm a CPA, and they say, that's great. And you can say something like, and what we do is we make the accountancy and tax really simple and easy for our clients. Because you want to encourage people to say, that sounds great. How do you do that? Because then you can start to tell your story about the way that you use technology to make sure people have the data they need to make the decisions they need, and that you provide them clarity and transparency around the fees that you charge. Go on, Dave.
Yeah, you're starting to get into really the critical aspect of acquiring new customers, new clients, and that's differentiation. But before we jump into that piece of it, you've talked about the what and the how, but what really intrigued me as well, and we're kindred spirits here, is in your book you said think about how you as a firm want to make your clients feel.
Yeah,
thought that was a great statement.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about client experience and everything about that I wrote in Digital Firm and certainly in Human Firm as well, is about how do we deliver great experiences for our clients. And when we think about client experience, the way I think about client experience is exactly that. It's how do you make somebody feel? And we're accountants, so sometimes you think, well, what do you mean? How can I make somebody feel? But you give somebody certainty about the fact that the revenue services are not going to come knocking on their door, or if a client calls you in a blind panic because something has happened, and you can give them that reassurance, and suddenly all of the weight kind of drains out, the color kind of returns to their face because you've made that impact. That's how you make somebody feel. And we have to think about the things that we do, and filing a tax return is not going to give somebody that warm fuzzy feeling, but having a conversation and helping them work out how they can send the kids to private school, or how they can pay their mortgage off by the time they're 40, whatever it is, they're the things that are going to have those impacts. And we need to be able to present that in our brand, and we need to think about what our brand means to us, our team, and to our clients. And that's what becoming a living brand is all about.
So you talked about the teenage firm and the growth of a firm and an organization. You also talk about firm personality. What is the personality of the firm? Because this is the way that firms connect with their clients, right? Well,
absolutely, and it's around point of difference, because we know, and if we take the kind of the concept of a personality, every individual has a unique personality. And every firm has the ability to have a unique personality. And a lot of the work that I do when I work with firm owners is helping them understand, how do you translate your personality into that of your firm, so that your team can understand what it is, what you stand for, what your drivers are, what your motivations are, and the way that you want to build the relationships with the clients that you serve.
That's good. So we got 3 other phases to go to, but before we leave Become a Living Brand, you also talk about be clear about your purpose and be sure you stand for something.
Yes. Yeah. So purpose is so powerful. And I had clear purpose. So anybody that's read Simon Sinek, kind of know your why. This is what we're talking about here. What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it that keeps you on your track? And this is the point. It's purpose is, if you truly understand your purpose, you will never deviate from it. So you have that absolute belief in what you're doing and why you're doing it. So take the time to really understand your why. And if you need help getting to your why, find an 8-year-old child, because 8-year-old children are brilliant at getting to the root cause of anything. And the way they do it is they just keep saying, "Yes, but why? But why?" And if you ask why enough times, you get to the point. And it can be really irritating. Anybody that's got an 8-year-old child will know that you get to the point where you say, "Well, just because." But that's a cop-out. So actually, if we keep going and we keep going, we get to the root cause of our why. And it's really important that you understand that, because it will drive everything that you do in your firm for the right reasons. And that's a really important thing, and it will keep you true to yourself and what you're trying to do.
So you know what, the power of curiosity is amazing. And we should all make sure that the 8-year-old never leaves our soul, because it really is how you continue to learn in this life. I mean, and we all know we all have to keep learning, and
Yeah.
You're sharing that. So let's jump into phase 2. Brittany, if you don't mind switching the slide over here. Grow touch points and their frequency. Well, maybe you can expand on this, and maybe just start off like what, to help the audience understand, what is a touch point?
Yeah. So if we go back to the idea of client experience, so the way that client experience is defined by kind of most management companies and things like that, is that customer experience is the sum total of every touch point you have with a client from first contact to last contact. Now, the accountant in me hears the word sum and says, well, okay, if it's a sum, then the more parts there are to that sum, the greater the total. So in my very simplistic terms, if I want to have a really high sum total of all the touch points they have, then let's have lots of them, because that drives great client experience. So a touch point is any contact you have with a client in whatever form. So whether that's an email, a phone call, a face-to-face meeting, a written communication, every one of these things is touch points. And if we think about wanting to deliver great client experience, which is what the human firm and the digital firm before it was kind of at the hub of all of this, because we exist for one purpose, and that's to create great experience for our clients, serve our clients as well as we can, help them deliver on their goals and aspirations. So we need to focus on how do we deliver great experiences for those clients. We need to be front of mind. I talk about advisory and say that we will be doing advisory when every client we've got picks up the phone and asks every question they've got. So how do you do that? You create great relationships. How do you create great relationships? You talk to your clients on a really regular basis. So what we want to do is look at, firstly, how can we build touch points into what we do? How can we make sure that they're valuable touch points? And the best example I have of this is lots of the firms I work with during the COVID period, and you guys had lockdowns like we did. You also probably had a government that was regularly giving you information to kind of how you could get funding and how you could get support. And the firms that I was talking to were saying things to me like, I can't believe it, Will. my clients are just saying really nice things at the moment. They've been really positive about what we're doing. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And they said, well, I don't know. I mean, we're talking to them regularly. We're kind of telling them what's going on and what support's available to them. Every time the government kind of does their 2-weekly announcement, we're doing webinars and we're talking to our clients and telling them what they can do. And I said, well, hold on a second. Do you think that there's possibly a positive correlation between the fact that you're talking to your clients more regularly and all of a sudden your clients are really positive about what you're doing for them? And you see the penny drop and it's like, oh yeah, now I get it. So then the challenge is, well, when the government stops giving you stuff to talk to your clients about every 2 weeks, what are you going to do instead? How are you going to make sure that you maintain that level of dialogue with your clients? So I encourage people to build services and build service offerings that enable you to have those frequent touch points. I'm a massive, massive advocate of the principle of daily bookkeeping. So when I set my firm up in 2007, I did what many accountants did and said, well, we don't really do bookkeeping because it's lower value. We can't do it profitably. We can't keep going out to the client's premises. But technology changed the way that we could think about that as a service, and it enables us to redefine and rebuild our entire business model. So right now we do bookkeeping and daily processing of transactions for 60% of our client base. We average 4 minutes per day per client in terms of processing that data. So we can deliver bookkeeping services really cost effectively. But most importantly, we position that service as a weekly service to our client, because the last thing our clients want is us hassling them for a $3 bill every day, because they're soon going to get a bit fed up with that. So once a week, we go out to our clients and we chase up any missing information, but it creates an opportunity for us to have a conversation. So the first recruit I ever had in my business was somebody to do payroll. So the first member of staff I took on was somebody to do payroll. And the reason we did it is because I wanted them to email a payslip to every client every month. So I paid somebody to send an email to a client every month with a payslip. But what happened is they'd send the payslip and the client would reply and they'd say, hey, Vicky, thanks for sending the payslip. Oh, and by the way, can you help me with this? So we started to build great relationships from a very early stage. And that was because we had a regular touch point. We remained front of mind of our clients. And if you go back to that idea of we will be doing advisory when every client we've got picks up the phone and asks every question they've got, we're front of mind because we're talking to them every week. So they don't even think about calling anybody else. They think about calling us because we're the people they think of first. And when they do that, we do one of three things. We either solve the problem on the phone, we say, we'd love to help you with that, we'll send you a proposal, or we can't help you with that, but we know someone that can. So you can't lose. It's like a win-win.
You know what? Well, one of the things when I'm mentoring people or I'm leading my teams, you know, there's a fundamental mantra, you know, and that is to add value with every interaction and connect with relevance. So you've just talked about, you know, increasing touch points, but also making them meaningful, which I think they're two. It's not just increasing touch points, but making them relevant and meaningful. Talk a little bit about that meaningful part of it, and then we'll go on to the third phase.
So a touch point for the sake of a touch point is not going to help. So how do we make them meaningful? And even the chasing for the records on a weekly basis has to have an element of meaning to it. So it gives you an opportunity to say, hey, how's your week been? How's the family? Remember, we're building relationships. We get to know our clients. Oh, last week you said you were doing that. How did that new client meeting go? So we have an opportunity to just demonstrate to our clients that we genuinely care. And that's not a problem, because as accountants and bookkeepers, the common denominator is that everyone really cares about the clients we serve. So it's just, we get so busy that sometimes we forget to show our clients that we care, and we do know what they're facing and we do know what their challenges are. And the more conversations we have, the better place we are to do that.
But really, in the why, and I was glad that you used the why, because I just saw your 8-year-old coming back out of you. But really on this, growing your touch points and the frequency, this is the attempt and the opportunity to create great client experiences, which I know, it resonates in everything that you talk about, Will. So let's go on to phase 3, and that is be human as you grow and scale. Now, very, very simple statement, but there's a lot behind this. And I think we all know what these words mean, but we'll just unpack it. And there's a difference between growth and scale, of course. And so, just take this one and
yeah, sure thing. So growth and scale, very different things. I'm on record, and I consistently go on record and say growing an accounting and bookkeeping firm is quite easy. Scaling one is much harder. So to grow, if you have a really clear message and you communicate it effectively, you will grow. You'll win business. You'll keep the clients that you've got, as long as you deliver on that message. So we're going back to the why, what, how. If you can clearly articulate your why, what, and how, and you articulate it effectively to the right people in the right places, and you then deliver on it, you will grow your client base. The challenge is that as you grow, it creates challenges. And in the book, I talk about certain points of pain through the growth journey. And this is from my own experiences, but also talking to many other firm owners over the years. And it's fascinating that I explain the points and they say, oh yeah, that one was really bad for us as well. And I'll tell you what they are. So the first obvious one is when you take on your first employee. So if you're a sole practitioner, the point at which you take on staff member number 1 or number 2, because you're already there, is naturally a daunting prospect. But from that point, give or take 10%, bear this in mind, this is headcount, 7 people, 15 people, 23 people, 35 people, 50 people, 70 people, and everybody tells me 100 people. So they are the points of growth and scale where you will hit challenges. And I say, give or take 10%, everybody's not always going to be there. But I've talked to firms and they've said, oh yeah, 23 was really, really tough. And there will be different challenges at each of those points. And the first one, 7, 8, is normally around structure. And how do we build the right kind of structures to enable us to scale? So the idea of scale is that we're building contingency and we're thinking about, well, what happens if something goes wrong? And I use an analogy in the book of a balloon. And if you imagine that you've got a balloon, you blow a balloon up to the kind of size that a balloon should be, and you hold it there, you're kind of stagnating, but you're kind of okay. But if you imagine, if you keep blowing that balloon and you keep blowing it, stretches and stretches and stretches, you're going to get to the point where it's just going to pop. It's going to blow. So if we think about the idea of the balloon wanting to lift us off the ground, so we can blow the balloon really big and we might kind of lift our feet off the ground. But actually, if you get 10 balloons and you put the right amount of air in each balloon, you'll gracefully be lifted up into the sky. And this is the principle that we need to build scale. We need to build the foundations for scale. And that structure, it's the way we price our services. It's the way we build our teams. All of these things enable us to continue to deliver on that great message. Remember the why, what, how.
Yeah. So, Will, this is, before we move on to phase 4, this to me is probably a good time for you to describe how you scaled your organization, how you've taught people, and the structure you put into place. Tell us about the pod and the concept and how you use the pod to scale.
Yeah. So there's 2 things that I kind of pin to our ability to have been able to scale, ignoring the kind of bumps in the road and everything else that naturally we encountered. One was that clarity of purpose that we've already talked about. The second was the way that we structure our business, and we structure in what we call pods. And a pod consists of 4 people, led by a client manager. We have a client manager, a senior, and 2 trainees. And our pods do everything for our clients with the exception of bookkeeping, which sits externally or centrally in the business. So we will do bookkeeping, we'll do accounts preparation, we'll do management reporting, we'll do personal tax, we'll do corporate tax. And all of that is led by the client manager. We can very tightly control the gross profit margins. We know the level of business that a pod can do before they start to creak and start getting too busy. And what it also does, it creates real clarity for our team. They can spot the career development opportunities because it's nicely mapped out. We have things like competency frameworks to help our team understand, well, what do I need to do if I want to get to that level? And as you grow as a business, you can just replicate that and create a new pod. So it may be you take two four-person pods and create three person pods as the next stage of evolution. But even if you're sitting there listening to this now and thinking, well, that kind of doesn't apply to me because I'm a sole practitioner or there's two of us sitting here. If you have aspirations for growth, now is the time to plan your pod, because you as the business owner, do you sit in the pod? Do you sit outside of the pod? So how many pods do you want? At what point do you think, actually, you know what, 8 people is fine, so that's 2 pods? But if that's your aspiration, are you one of the client managers, or are you sitting above and driving the business? Because it will help you think about, who do I recruit, when, and what does it look like? Because your trainee today is going to be your senior in 3 years, and your senior today is going to be your client manager in 3 years.
So layer in, as you're growing, as you're scaling, the pod concept as well, and then the importance of employee retention, because you cover that very nicely in the book.
Yes, it's much easier to retain people and recruit, or it should be. I mean, but what we've got to do, we're seeing lots of things around generational shift. So millennial and Gen Z, particularly when we talk about Gen Z, which is like the newest generation coming into the workplace right now. The way that certainly from a UK point of view, the way that these people have gone through their final stages of schooling has all been framework driven. So it's all, you got to do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. It's critical that we recognize that in the people that we employ and give them the clarity around, what does my career path look like? And we're seeing generational shifts in terms of, I want to understand how my contribution impacts the purpose of the organization. What's my role, and how do I know that I'm doing the right thing? And I'm only going to work for an organization that I believe matches my values. So all of this stuff is really important from a retention point of view, and thinking about, what do we do to ensure that we create the opportunities for our people. And I talk to firms and they're always really anxious about sharing numbers and growth plans, but I can guarantee that your team want to be involved in a high growth, exciting business rather than a static firm that isn't going anywhere. So think about the opportunities to create clear career progression, clear career paths for the people that are part of your team.
All right, let's move into the phase 4. Embrace technology to become more human. In the book, Will, and in our conversations, I mean, technology is a great enabler, but you talk about, let the tech do the grunt work so you can do the human work.
Absolutely. So we look at what's happened, and astonishingly, and I hope there's people here listening that will kind of take something away from this next point. The UK is seen to be fairly kind of advanced in terms of adoption of cloud accounting technology. I promise you, we're not. So I talk in the book about adoption levels in the UK. When I wrote The Digital Firm in 2018, I said we were at 20% adoption level of cloud accounting technology in the UK. In 2023, when I wrote The Human Firm, I said we are at 20% adoption in the UK. Now, that doesn't mean that we didn't move in 5 years. What it means is I was way too ambitious in 2018. So right now, today, we are still only at 20% adoption, which means the firms that are using cloud accounting technology in the UK are in the top quartile of accounting firms. And I would be fairly confident in saying that if you're doing it in Canada, you are certainly in the top quartile of firms in Canada as well. So the early adopter advantage is still there. We are still in early adopter territory. And actually, when we talk about using cloud accounting technology, that's not just using Sage Business Cloud, because that's not enough. How do you get data? Are you using tools like auto entry to get that data and stop you doing that data processing? Are you using the core general ledgers to deliver the right kind of output, and using tools like Futurely to be able to bring the numbers to life for your clients? So it's not just about saying, well, we used to use Sage 50, we're now on Sage Business Cloud, so look at us, aren't we doing great? You've taken the first step, but actually modern technology hasn't been designed for you to key data into. So we have to rethink the business model. We have to be prepared to rethink the business model. And the idea of things like daily bookkeeping is about using the tools to deliver what they were designed to deliver. And that's real-time information, being able to pick up the phone and talk to your client about data that's relevant today, and not data that's going to be relevant when you've processed it in 3 months' time. So we have to embrace technology. It's no longer a choice. If we take the McKinsey, 60–70% is going to be automated within the next 6 years. What are we going to do? We have to. We can't do the human firm if we're not using technology as a foundation. And as David, you said earlier on in the session, technology is simply an enabler. You can have the best technology in the world, but if you haven't got the right people using it, and you haven't thought about the processes that underpin it, it's not worth doing. That's kind of the point. If you've got people that won't use it, can't use it, don't want to use it, then don't bother investing in the technology. We've got to bring our people with us, because that's the only way we're going to realize the value to give us the capacity and the capability to go out and do the amazing things that we can do for our clients by being human.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna get to the Q&A session fairly soon, fairly quickly. But I do want to, Will, to have you talk a little bit about the 9-step checklist. So, what I took out of the book and my conversations with you, and thank you for this, is bookkeeping firms, accounting firms, CPA firms need to differentiate themselves through a purpose-driven processes, strong client relationships, and a human-centric approach. Those are 3 things that are very simple, and you've brought it to life extremely well. So here's a 9-step checklist. And once again, everybody, you will be receiving a recording of this webinar. We'll walk us through the 9 steps, and then let's get into some Q&A.
Great. I'll do this really quickly, because hopefully we've covered some of this off. And the idea of this checklist is to give you these pointers to go away and have a think about it. And I'll kind of cover off things like connecting with me on LinkedIn in a moment. But so we talked about some of these. So we talked about the importance of brand personality, thinking about who you are, who you want to work with, who you want to work for, and building your propositions around those people. The idea of setting a human-centric purpose. Why do you do what you do? Being really clear on what it is that drives you to if you're a firm owner, to go through the challenges of having to run your own firm and the pressures that comes with that. We all have purpose. We all have an understanding of what we want to do in the world. And don't be shy about communicating that and sharing that with your team and the clients that you serve. Think about building an inventory of touch points. How can you create meaningful touch points in what you do? Think about the services that you deliver. Think about ways in which you can make your touch points more frequent. So looking at services like daily bookkeeping, looking at how you run your payroll services, thinking about how can we support our business clients that have got staff with HR, and all of these different kind of ways that we can create meaningful, frequent touch points. Pod structures are the single biggest enabler for effective scale. The challenges with a lot of CPA type firms is that we want to hold those client relationships. I get that we want to hold those client relationships, but if all of your client relationships are held by partners, you're limiting your ability to scale. that's a choice that we all have. We can do that, or we can choose to scale a firm that can run without us. The concept really of moving from being a CPA practice to a CPA business and thinking differently. How do you create a business that can run without you? And it doesn't have to run without you, but having the ability to choose whether it does is a really powerful thing. Provide clarity, transparency, and training to support your employees. This is how you get retention. This is how you keep employees in your business, by making sure they understand what they need to do to progress, making sure you communicate the opportunity. In 2015, we were about 30 people. We lost 6 members of staff in 8 weeks. And the reason we lost 6 members of staff in 8 weeks, 20% of our workforce, they all said, I can't see any career progression. And the reason they couldn't see it is because I didn't tell them. I didn't make it black and white. So be really clear and transparent and open about how you support your employees. Make sure that that's communicated really regularly through one-to-ones and all of those other kind of things. Client retention, make it a priority. Measure client satisfaction through Net Promoter Score. And if you don't know what Net Promoter Score is, go out and Google it and ask that question of your clients. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to your friends and family? It's a benchmark that lets you measure what you're doing for your clients. If 70% of your new client business isn't coming from client referrals, stop and take a look in the mirror and ask why. So the better that you serve your clients, the more likely they're going to refer other people. They will drive your growth. And finally, last point we touched on, let the tech do the grunt work so you can do the human work. Let's take the robot out of the human to enable us to be empowered and use the human capability that the technology is never going to have. That human empathy, that human emotional intelligence that's so valuable to the clients that we serve, and how they want us to help them.
That's how you become a human firm. So let's, Brittany, why don't you come back on camera? I think we've got time for 2 or 3 questions before we wrap up.
Yes, let me skip to the Q&A slide. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your questions during the session. I'm going to start with this one from Claudine, which is, what are your suggestions when you feel it is time to sell your business? How do you tell your staff, or should you tell them? Will, maybe I'll start with you.
Great question. So we've certainly been on the other end of that in terms of we've made a couple of acquisitions over the years. I think it's a really difficult thing to do. I think you have to communicate because firstly, there may be people in your team that would love to continue your legacy. So step one is like, is there a way that you can facilitate that to happen? And that's going to depend on all sorts of things in terms of, do you need a big lump sum as you exit? Are there ways that you can work with your team to facilitate that happening? I think you've got to, if you go into sell and you go into share that with your team, make sure that you're close enough and you're far enough down the process, because the last thing you want to do is set alarm bells ringing, and the success of the handover is going to be so dependent on your people being able to provide that continuity. From a buyer perspective, having gone through this process, what's really important is that there is a number 2. So there is somebody that sits underneath you, Claudia, that's going to be the continuity. So it may be that there's certain members of your team that you have the conversation with and are prepared to have a conversation with your buyer, because it's really, really important from the buyer's point of view. Who do we rely on when you're not there? But certainly, step one, if you haven't had that conversation, think about the people that have been so important to your firm's success. Is there a way that you can facilitate them carrying on the legacy of what you've created?
And the buying organization, the buying firm, is going to want to know who those employees are and how they can fit in. And once it's about communication, right? Like keep the dialogue open. and paint the picture of what the future path, the future journey is like for your current cherished employees. And the one thing I learned, at a very, very young child is transparency is most always the best way to go. So let's get another question, because we do need to start wrapping this up fairly soon.
Sure.
Brittany, another question that's out there?
Next question we have is, how do you strike a balance between leveraging technology for efficiency and maintaining meaningful human interactions with clients?
Great question. And we're seeing this. We're seeing this in practice management solutions where the software will create automated email correspondence and everything else. So first thing is make sure that you do have some control over the language that you're using. Just because it's automated doesn't mean it can't be personal. So use and AI, generative AI is going to get even better at doing this for us in terms of being able to control the tone of communications and so on. But think about the value of the communication. So if we automate the record collecting communication, that frees the time up for us to have the meaningful conversations about the stuff like, we've done your taxes, now this is the position, and here's some stuff we want to think about for next year. And by not having to do all of the manual comms about, hey, it's year end and we need all your records, and chasing records and spending time, your team chasing clients to get the data into you, let that stuff be automated, because that's the mundane, that's the routine. So let's use the time to focus on the more meaningful human interactions that we can deliver.
Okay, so to the audience here, you'll be able to download the guide. It will be coming in the follow-up email that Brittany is going to be sending out. You can download it right from there in the link. So let's go on to the next slide, and then we've got to move on to the wrap-up. So, what are the next steps for you to become a human firm with Sage for Accountants? Coming up in April and May, we are launching Sage for Accountants Suite here in Canada. It is the largest, really, in the 10 years that I've been with Sage. This is the largest launch that we're having. This is going to revolutionize your firms. What is the Sage for Accountants Suite? It's an end-to-end solution to allow you guys to make better decisions. It allows you to deploy technology, whether it's Go Proposal, Auto Entry, Futurely, whether it's Sage 50 or Sage Business Cloud Accounting. It takes you all the way from proposal to advisory, and it's an open system. So if you also have QuickBooks or Xero or any of the Sage products, this is one client suite, the Sage for Accountants Suite that happens. If you want to be the first to be notified, you will also have the opportunity to fill out that form. We are going to be bringing this out. This is going to be a major release for Sage in Canada that will be followed up by events as well that are taking place at the end of May. And take a look at it, see what's coming. And also, I would suggest, Will's talked about generative AI. Jump into that and take a look at what's coming with Sage Copilot. It is amazing. And I love people, process not so much, but I also love technology. And like I said, it's I'm not a geek, but it's just how we as humans can leverage technology to make us more productive, but also more valuable, within the client. So that's that. Moving on to the next slide here. So here's a nice quote. Please, you've listened to Will here. I've read both these books. This is the digital firm. This is the human firm. I would suggest 2 for 1. Buy them both. They play off each other. And Will, I can't wait to see what's next. People are going to be becoming human firms. They're going to be picking up on what you've talked about in the digital firm, because it's a journey for each of these firms. And so, Will, final word from you.
Yeah, so firstly, if we didn't get to any of the questions, I'd love people to connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to post those questions to me and I'll very happily respond to them for you. I'd love people to get the book, and if you do, tell me what you think, share the feedback. And in terms of where we go from here, the digital firm was very much a backward look for us as a firm. It was stuff that we'd done. The human firm, whilst we've done chunks of it, it's aspirational for us. So it's aspirational for me, is where I think we're going as a profession. So whilst the digital firm was, hey, we've done this, you should do it too, this is where we're going. This is where we think we should be focusing our effort now. And what I hope is that other firms are going to join me on that journey, because it is about, let's unlock the power of us as human beings by letting technology do the things that it does best. So love to get your feedback when you read the book, and it's been an absolute pleasure having the opportunity to talk to you all today.
All right, with that, Will Farnell, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your experience and your wisdom. It truly is priceless. Brittany Kilpatrick, thank you for making this live webinar possible. I've always enjoyed working with you. And for those of you that joined today, thank you very much for your time. And I hope each of you value the moments ahead and enjoy your own personal journey into the future.
Thank you.